Canadians pride themselves on fairness. It's part of our national identity, right alongside maple syrup and hockey. From coast to coast, we like to think of ourselves as a nation where everyone gets a fair shot, no matter who they are or where they come from. It's a value we teach our kids, and a story we tell ourselves about what it means to be Canadian. We trust in the rule of law, believing justice is blind and the scales are balanced for everyone. Our courts and police are supposed to treat each person equally, guided by the same laws and principles. That's the promise of Lady Justice: impartiality, fairness, and equality before the law. But lately, many are questioning if that's still true. Across the country, conversations are shifting. People are starting to wonder if the system is as fair as we've always believed. Headlines show peaceful protesters facing harsh penalties, while others who incite violence seem to get off easy. The news is filled with stories that make us pause and ask, are the rules really the same for everyone? Suddenly, Lady Justice's blindfold looks like it's slipping. The symbol of fairness is being questioned, and the trust we place in our institutions feels a little less certain. This isn't just a legal debate, it's a kitchen table conversation across the country. Families, friends, and neighbors are talking about what justice really means and whether it's being served equally. People remember the Freedom Convoy, the government's crackdown, and wonder, is everyone truly equal before the law? The events sparked heated debates and left many Canadians feeling uneasy about how justice is applied. This video dives into that question. We'll unpack the controversies, the court decisions, and the public reactions that have put our justice system under the microscope. We'll explore the Freedom Convoy, the government's unprecedented response, and a court ruling that shook the nation. These moments have forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our legal system. We'll also look at other cases that fuel the sense of a double standard. From high-profile trials to everyday encounters with the law, the perception of fairness is being tested. This is about fairness, freedom, and the Canada we want to believe in. It's about the values that unite us, and the challenges we face in living up to them. Is equal justice still a promise we can trust? Or is it time to take a closer look at how justice is really served in Canada today? In early 2022, frustration with COVID rules boiled over. People were tired of lockdowns, mask mandates, and restrictions that had been in place for nearly 2 years. A new mandate for cross-border truckers sparked a protest that quickly grew into the Freedom Convoy. This mandate required truckers to be vaccinated to cross the US-Canada border, igniting a firestorm of dissent. Convoys from across Canada converged on Ottawa, filling the streets with trucks, flags, and thousands of people. The capital city became the epicenter of a national movement. For participants, it was about standing up for freedom, peaceful, patriotic, and loud. They saw it as a fight for their rights and liberties. They were everyday Canadians, mechanics, farmers, waitresses, and truckers, united by frustration. They felt their voices were not being heard by the government, but for Ottawa residents, it was chaos. Blaring horns, blocked streets, and closed businesses. The daily life of the city was severely disrupted. The protest was disruptive, no question, but overwhelmingly non-violent. Despite the noise and inconvenience, there were no major incidents of violence. Bouncy castles and street hockey games happened alongside the noise. Families brought their children, turning parts of the protest into a community event. Protesters saw themselves as exercising their democratic right to peaceful assembly. They believed they were standing up for fundamental freedoms. They believed they were part of a long tradition of civil disobedience in Canada. This was their way of making their voices heard. The hardship for locals was real, but so was the conviction of those protesting. Both sides felt strongly about their positions. This context is crucial as we look at what happened next. Understanding the motivations and the impact on both sides is key to grasping the full story. The right to protest is supposed to be protected in Canada. It's enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But the government's response would change everything. The measures taken to end the protest would spark even more debate and controversy. As the protest entered its third week, tensions in Ottawa reached a boiling point. The city's downtown core was gridlocked, with streets blocked by trucks and protesters refusing to leave. Residents grew frustrated, businesses shuttered, and the nation watched as the standoff dragged on. In response, the federal government invoked the Emergencies Act, a first in Canadian history, marking an unprecedented moment for the country. This extraordinary law, designed for only the gravest national crises, handed sweeping new powers to police and authorities. It also allowed banks to freeze accounts linked to protesters, all without the need for court orders or due process. Even small donors, ordinary Canadians who had sent just a few dollars to support the convoy, suddenly found their finances locked, unable to access their own money. Organizers like Tamara Litch and Chris Barber were arrested and charged with serious crimes, facing the possibility of up to 7 years in prison for their roles in the protest. Litch, a grandmother with no prior criminal record, was denied bail and treated as if she were a dangerous offender, sparking outrage among her supporters and civil liberties advocates. For many Canadians, this felt like a betrayal of democratic rights and freedoms they had always believed were protected. After all, the right to protest peacefully is supposed to be a fundamental pillar of any democracy, a way for citizens to make their voices heard. Instead, peaceful demonstrators were suddenly labeled as threats to national security, their actions criminalized overnight. The message from authorities was unmistakable. Dissent, even if nonviolent, would not be tolerated under these extraordinary measures. To many watching across the country, the government's response seemed more dangerous and alarming than the protest itself, raising questions about the limits of state power. It looked less like an effort to keep the peace, and more like a determined attempt to crush dissent and silence opposition. As the dust settled and the streets emptied, it was clear. The fallout from this historic overreach was just beginning, and its impact would be felt for years to come. After the streets cleared, civil liberties groups challenged the government's use of the Emergencies Act in court. In January 2024, the federal court ruled the government's actions unlawful and unconstitutional. Justice Mosley found the legal threshold for a national emergency was not met. The protest was disruptive, but not a threat to Canada's existence. The court said freezing bank accounts without warrants violated charter rights. Broad bans on public assembly also infringed on free expression. The judge called the government's response a sledgehammer where a scalpel was needed. This was a major victory for civil liberties and a rebuke of government overreach. The ruling affirmed, the government is not above the law. The government is appealing, but for now, the verdict stands. The rule of law prevailed, at least for now. You might recall the RUO Inquiry, which said the government was justified in using the Emergencies Act, so why did the court disagree? The inquiry took a broad, policy-based view, focusing on the chaos and economic disruption. The court, however, applied the law strictly. If the legal test isn't met, the act can't be used. The government's own intelligence experts said the protest didn't meet the definition of a national security threat. That's why the court's decision matters more. It sets a binding legal precedent. Courts protect our rights, inquiries offer opinions. The ruling reinforces that governments can't just redefine laws in a crisis. It's a shield for our freedoms, no matter who's in power. The RUO report gave a political narrative. The court gave us legal protection. This is about more than one protest. It's about the future of our rights. The stakes couldn't be higher. The harsh treatment of convoy protesters stands out even more when compared to other cases of protests. Some rallies in Canada have featured open calls for violence, yet organizers rarely face serious charges or frozen bank accounts. Meanwhile, peaceful protesters risk years in prison for their actions. There are also cases where violent offenders receive lighter sentences to avoid deportation. This creates a perception of a two-tiered justice system, one rule for some, another for others. It's not about being tough on everyone, it's about consistency and fairness in the application of the law. When the law seems to play favorites, trust in the system erodes. Canadians want equal justice, not special treatment. The principle of fairness is at the heart of our society and its values. Canada is at a crossroads. The Freedom Convoy, the government's crackdown, and the court's ruling have exposed deep cracks in our justice system. The fight for fairness isn't over. Organizers still face years in prison, and the government is appealing the court's decision. This isn't just about one protest, it's about every Canadian's right to equal treatment. When people believe the system is rigged, trust collapses. Democracy depends on justice being blind and the law being applied equally. We need open, honest conversations about these issues, without fear or labels. Free expression, peaceful assembly, and equality before the law are Canadian values. It's up to all of us to defend them. Let your elected officials know you expect fairness. If you feel the system isn't working, speak up. Our freedoms aren't guaranteed, they must be protected. Let's talk about the Canada we want, together. If you found this video valuable, please like, follow, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.